Hi, everyone. My name is Kelli Anderson, and I am a digital learning coach in the Texas area. So today I'm going to be sharing you not only my love for Diffit, but specifically focus on standards-based learning in the classroom. And with standards-based learning or standards-based mindset, grading, whatever you want to call it, we're really focused on the standards. So with this specifically, since I am in Texas, I'm going to be focusing on how we use Diffit to help us with standards-based learning with our Texas standards or TEKS. I love Diffit specifically because of how versatile it is. Not only are they growing and adding new things, but now I can go into Diffit, pull a resource that will meet students for all levels, whether I need an extension, I need an intervention, I need a different reading level, I need a new way to assess my students. Like if I'm doing a retest, I can go into Diffit and pull a resource within minutes, and my students are able to have that practice to build on their success. It's specifically with standards-based learning, we're looking at the standard. We're looking at where the student is showing mastery or growth or success in what the standard says. So the standard is looking at identifying the author's purpose and the message of the text. How am I building students to master that skill? And within Diffit, I can pull resources based on that standard and use it in the classroom. And so what I love about this is that I can go in, I can say which standards I'm looking for. I can select if I want a fiction or a nonfiction piece based on what students are working on. And as an English teacher, you know, we really look at both because both are going to be on our end of the year assessment or star and seeing where the students are at on that based on that standard. So I'm going to show you how to pull this real quick, but then I'm going to dive deeper into how you can use not only the resources it generates, but also taking those resources with what's already available in Diffit and using it in the classroom. So when you are in Diffit, you're going to see we have our home screen, okay? And you're now going to see down here where it says align to standards. So you have ELA or English, you have history, and you have science. And in Texas, remember the science standards are new, so those are still updating. But we have ELA and we have history. I'm going to use ELA as an example as an English teacher. That's what I'm very comfortable with. So say I want them, we've been talking author's purpose and figurative language. And so I want to assess where my students are at or even just do a pre-assessment where they're at. So I know where I want to put them in groups based on that learning. Who's going to work well together? Who am I going to need to pull to support? Who am I going to need to give extensions to? Who's already knows this and where I want to build on from there. So I want this to be a fictional piece. And again, if you already have a video that you want to use, you can click here, do the video, and you're still going to have the standard alignment. Or if you already have a text that you want to use, you can click here and upload it as a PDF or copy and paste it, and you're still going to have the standard alignment option. So, but I'm going to use the use anything today as my example when I'm going through all this and how it's used in the classroom. So I'm going to put fiction, I'm going to click ELA, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select Texas because those are the standards I'm using. Now I'm going to select 8th grade because as a middle school, that's where I'm at. And then I'm going to type in author, and I'm going to see what it gives me. So I have author's claim, which is not what I want, but I do want a 9.A, and I want the one on figurative language 9.D. So we're going to set these skills. So now I'm going to enter the theme or topic I want. We're just going to do fairy tale princess. See what it gives me. There we go. See what it gives me. All right, generate the resource. And it's going to take a few seconds. But again, I'm taking that information and then I'm going to use it within my classroom so I can see where students are based on standard. Based on, well, this standard specifically, author's purpose with the message of the text and author's use of figurative language. So now that you see I have this built, I have my passage for students to read, the summary, the vocab words. But here is what's great. And I'm going to get into all this export here when I go into specific examples in the classroom. But down here, you're going to see I now have questions, multiple choice, along with short answer that are specifically aligned to the standard. And if I hover over it, I'm going to see what the standard is right there. So, for example, this one's using it to describe how the author's use of figurative language, such as extended metaphor, achieves specific purpose. So I have the question, the phrase gilded cage is used to describe Alara's royal life. What impact does the phrase have on the reader's perception of Alara's situation? So you're looking at that figurative language, that extension throughout, and making those connections. So that's just a quick summary of how I'm building it, how I'm looking, how standards are already built in, which again is adding to my love for Diffit. But what I really want to look at is in the classroom. So when I'm in the classroom using this and I'm thinking standards based, I'm starting with pre-assessing my students to see where they're at. Then from there, I'm moving students to support them. So within Diffit, within my classroom, I'm really looking at collaboration. How can I help students collaborate? How can I help students be innovative? How can I help students think critically with those responses and building on those conversations? Giving them those extensions, helping them grow in their success, mastering that standard or that skill, along with how can I also support all students? And the last thing is going to be when it comes to STAR prep. And when I'm prepping my students, we have these weeks right before STAR where we call it STAR prep, where we are, it's just let's review everything at this point. Let me see what I can help you with and get you to that level. Make sure you are just ready to walk in the room. How can I help you? So based on these, when we're focused specifically on collaboration, I'm looking at ways students can work together. Okay. When I'm looking at critical thinking or being innovative or adding to what they're doing, I'm looking at how can students practice a skill within a skill. So inferencing. When I'm looking at respond, I'm looking at a way to defend or support what their answer is and not just say, well, her dress is pink. What is that meaning behind it? Give me more. So I'm looking at ways that I can do this. I'm looking at ways that I can get a student engaged without adding to my plate or adding more. So within Diffit, these are the three really great ones that I've kind of looked at. But there's so many ways to export it. But if I'm thinking specifically for collaboration, if I'm looking at collaboration, so over on the side, after you've looked at your resource, you're going to see this export your content. Okay. So you have different ways, but I love looking at these activities and pulling them. And one of the activities that I really like under collaboration is going to be this hexagonal thinking. So I can take this, I can use the vocab words. I could have them, if I'm doing figurative language, I could have them pull figurative language pieces out and make the connections throughout. But students are able to work together when they're building this hexagonal thinking because they're making those connections, whether it's with the vocab words Diffit has already given me, I can add more to it. Or if I'm wanting them to work on figurative language within the piece, I can have them find the figurative language pieces and then make the connections to that. But what's really great is this is already built. I can edit the content. I can just export this section alone. So if I want to export this, it's going to generate this document for me to be able to print. And then we're going to be able to see that I can bring this out. So I love hexagonal thinking for that one. Another one that I love for critical thinking, because again, when we're thinking standards-based, we have to go beyond just what the standard says. We have to challenge our students where they're at and meet them where they're at and help them with growth. So another one that I really like, if I'm going to do change activity, is going to be the inferencing skills. So under critical thinking, we have a lot here. We have a flow chart where you can have them work on, if you're doing the standard of plot, what is happening, or conflict, where are they at? But what's really great is, let me scroll down some more, is there's this really making inference one. So I'm going to pull this one and I'm going to have the kids say, because again, if I'm talking figurative, authors use the figurative language. When the author says this, I already know this, so I can infer this. So if I'm looking at when the author is saying something, for example, with the Gilded Cage, what do I already know about this based on what I read? Based on that, I can infer this about the princess. And it's building on that skill students need support in. Or you want to do an extension. This one actually would be great for extension if students are already showing that they're mastering that standard. This would be great for an extension, moving kids, giving them that, yeah. So this is another really good one that I like to use. Let me go back to my content. And then if I'm thinking response, I'm wanting a way for students to be able to defend what they're saying. So instead of saying this is what it means, well, tell me more about this. Where are you getting this evidence from? What is supporting that? And so if I'm going up here to respond, sorry, I'm gonna do the claim and evidence. There it is, claim and evidence slide. So if I'm wanting them to respond what the author's stating about, so here's my summary. Identify the claim the authors make. So if I'm looking specifically at the figurative, what about figurative language is the author making? What is supporting that inference that I can make based on that evidence? And so I can break students up and quickly, once I hand this out to them, I can quickly see where students are at and support them in that way. But again, what's really great is Diffit's creating these within seconds and I have it ready to go. If I'm needing to, I have a group of students who have shown me they understand this skill and I need a quick extension activity, that hexagonal thinking, I have used it in the classroom. If I have students who are going to maybe need a little bit more support, that inferencing activity is going to be a great way that we can do a small group together. If I have students who are in the middle, maybe they did well on like some of them, but not all of the figurative language in the piece, I can use that claim and evidence to have them practice a little bit more. But then I can take the questions that are aligned, and I can use that to again assess where my students are at. Another thing that I love with this is if I am working in standards-based grading, I want to be able to support all my students. So supporting all of my students, I need to, for my EL students, my ESL students, I can translate it into their native language and support them there. If I have students who need a modified text, I can take what I've already created and modify it on reading level. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you my resource. So I've already created this, okay? And so now I want to translate it. So I'm going to hit the translate button. And we're just going to translate it to the first one. We want all of that to translate. And now I want to help support my ESL students. And so one of the activities that I love when it comes to my ESL students is the 5 W's. So I can click on the 5 W's and now it's the vocab is translated to where I can support them in their native language for them to be successful in that standard and see where they are at and see what support they need beyond that. So that is something that I love about this. And I have used this in the classroom to where students can have these conversations one-on-one with me, and it's meeting them at their level for them to be successful and help them grow. So again, love that. If I need to come in here, another one that I really like is a vocabulary practice activity. So if I want to change the reading level, so say I want to lower it to 6th grade, I'm going to regenerate. Okay. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do new vocab. Now, there's a few different vocab ones on here, but the one I wanted to look at is going to be where there's the Freyer model. So I want to take, sometimes if it's a great instructional strategy, don't reinvent the wheel. I love this model. I use this in the classroom all the time with all my students. So not only did I take my passage, I changed the reading level to meet my students where they're at. Now I'm going to export this activity that's already where I need it to be. And I don't have to modify anything. It's differentiated already, and it's great. So now I can work with my students who need that extra support without having to start over in what I'm creating. And then lastly, everything I've talked about leads to our STAR prep in Texas. And with standards-based learning, it is a big part of what we do. Again, the STAR is not end all be all, but when we're preparing students and we're in that STAR review, or if we're looking through things out the year to support growth and see where kids are at, and the fact that Diffit can align for us and provide AI generated material within seconds gives us that ability to focus more on where our students are and what they need. So we're able to free up our time. So for example, in the classroom, I'm spending less time creating resources or Googling resources. So now I can take what Diffit gives me in seconds and build on it and add more if I need to. If I have a student who maybe I see that he's showing mastery in where he's at and he needs an extension, I'm going to pull up that resource I already created. I'm going to go look at the export options that are already there, and I have an activity for them to practice. If I have a student who is struggling, I can go back into my resource, I can change the reading level, and I can pull that there and be like, okay, let's meet you where you're at, and then let's move you up. Because at the end of the day, we have to support kids where they are, and we have to help build them. And so if we're looking at standards-based learning, we have to see where they're at on that standard and support them and make them feel like they've got this. And as a teacher, being able to take off, a lot of this creation on my plate, and if it gives it to me in seconds, now I can focus more on doing more for my students. And that's why I love this. So again, thank you so much. I hope that this was helpful. I loved it. I'll just say it 100 times, I hope this was helpful, and thank you so much for watching.